Hello and welcome. These are horse racing selections for Thursday, the 17th of July. I am Flatcap Callum and I'm hoping you are all very, very well. I've returned from the ether of no bet days. Ended up being Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday no bet days. I am starting the channel week on Thursday and I'm starting it in Ireland. Killarney and Leopardstown split leg Yankee £10 stake. That is what we've got. I do need to say up front as well, I have recorded this video once and it was a long one. This is probably going to be the same, and for some reason, if there's like the second time ever, it didn't save properly and I'm having to do it again. And I'm slightly irritated about the fact I'm having to do it again, and I'm hoping it doesn't get in the way of my normal jolly demeanour. That I'm redoing this video, and it's another compounding reason about why this video is out so late when it wasn't supposed to be out as late as what it's going to be. So there's my little rant. What I should say as well about today's video is I'll do the bets. Before I do that, I'll do the review of Saturday last week as well, and then after the bets, got some waffle, some ramble to go through with you. Obviously, I haven't had a video since Saturday, so you need it. Some of you will be just viewers who pop in, get the tips, and off you go, and that's it. Some of you I know will be watching across all various different channels and seeing what goes on. And if you're one of those types of folks, you may well have been aware of the kerfuffle that's gone on this week in YouTube horse racing land. So yes, I'm going to be recommending you a video, and I'm going to be giving you my view and my take on said kerfuffle. I don't normally get involved in stuff like this, but I'll also give you a reason why I'm sort of talking about it and stuff as well. So if you want the review of the horses, you can have that. It's coming now. If you want the rest of it, stay on the line. Thanks for calling in. You didn't, did you? You just looking at your phone or looking at your phone or your laptop. No one's called in. Like, that's what they say in the 90s, isn't it? Anyway, the review. Saturday's such an arse Saturday. Like, we had 3 winning days in a row, albeit tiny profit days. And then Saturday goes and blows it out, and we end up minus 8p. Anyway, it wasn't a good day. It was 10.62 loss, so it was 188 back from our 12.50 stake. So we basically had nothing any good, close but not any good, but no good. And then Houston was one of the placings. The Percy Shelley, Mason Patel's ride got close but not close enough. But it got us £1, 88 back. It was shorter at SP. So as I said, despite all the extra little endeavour last week, we ended up minus 8 pence. So some will call that break even. Technically, it is a loss. So that means that we are 5 weeks in a row on a loss after our 8 pence loss, which is really infuriating, because we are absolutely due to be trying to hit something, land something mathematically, statistically. I can't promise it, but I know mathematically and statistically it is due. So, probability says it's due, but probability, sometimes you have to wait for it. Anyway, so that's that. Oh yeah, I've forgotten. Oh yeah, there was a forecast in there too. That went down as well. Although one of them was second, I think. Right, the bet for Thursday. So we'll start with the 1 minute past 5 at Killarney, which is not where most would start. It's a maiden race. I've got to try and remember now, because it's like ages ago I made this video and I had to remember then. Now I've got to remember again why I picked these horses. Anyway, what can I tell you? Fast Felix. It's a funny maiden in that there's a lot of them that have run a number of times, more than a normal maiden, I would say. You'd usually get more horses that sort of literally haven't run under rules and that kind of stuff. I know it's sort of where we are in the season, but still. Anyway, Fast Felix very exposed, and last time out, inexplicably didn't run very well at Kilbeggan, despite being a reasonable odds 13-2. Ran no sort of race, completely wrong, different to what he normally does. So, as a result of that run at Kilbeggan, we've got some much better odds than we probably should have. Now, it may be there's something wrong with it, so that might be the problem. It's sort of, there's an issue, Or it might be he didn't like Kilbeggan, or they weren't fancying it at Kilbeggan, or it ate two breakfasts. I don't know, but I think it's worth trying because if you base it on the rest of the form, then this is a framer type of horse, despite the fact we're planning a 16 runner maiden with no extra places. 6 o'clock, it was 2 minutes past 6 o'clock. Killarney swell time, 8-1. It was it last summer. Its best performance was last summer over course and distance. And yeah, it looked pretty good last time, so I think it might be coming to the boil, so we'll put that in. 7 at Killarney, that's a really interesting one. Game Phoenix, a lot of people will walk past this horse, and on that basis some people would think, why is it even 18-1, it should be bigger. I actually had it shorter, so I don't know that it will go shorter. It's one of those ones that could go bigger. I don't necessarily see it as a gambled on horse, even though it could be a good horse. We'll see. But it's run a number of 6 times in maidens, and this actually is its handicap debut on jumps. So it took a while before it did debut on the flat as well. It's sort of been over both disciplines. Whether it's a natural for jumps, not entirely sure, but if you look at the performances it's running, so not the rating, if you looked at the rating that it's run to, the standard it's run to on ratings, you would say it's not handicapped very well for debut. If you look at particularly some of this last year's stuff, and the Fairy House run is a particular one, there's a couple of them though, that the horses it's finished behind, and not very far behind, have gone on to be much, much better than the 101 rating that this horse has got. So if you read that literal in terms of actually how it's performed against horses that have gone on to be much better, it's a really, really well handicapped horse. So yeah, I wanted to include it, knowing that it might even get bigger. But I think if it runs to that sort of form, we could be on for a framer, definitely. And then the 725 Leopardstown, I like this race, I like these horses. So I've split legged them, and I say that literally. I got a text from someone. They said, "Oh, have you seen this 725? Got a right good horse in this one." And I asked a message back going, "Yeah, that's my favourite race too, and I don't like yours and I like mine." So yeah. Probably neither of us will win anyway, and no, I'm not going to tell you what they picked. So anyway, the 725 Longbourn is second preference. Won the late race last year, £1 difference in the weights. Aging, but I think it could be aimed to be running a decent one. This one, Shigar is my favoured horse. I think you could ignore the last 2 runs when it had £7 and £10 claimers on. Back with a kind of a professional jockey in terms of riding without a claim. Usually ridden by Chris Hayes, Ronan Whelan's on, but no bad thing. I think this is a trying day, and conditions suit. So I think Shigar's good for 28s. So the bet is complicated. 2 times 12p each way Yankees. We've got Fast Felix, Swell Time and Game Phoenix going on to Longbourn. And then we've got Fast Felix, Swell Time, Game Phoenix going on to Shigar. We've then got a 35p each way double. That's Game Phoenix and Shigar. So I've written that as 35. Oh, do you know what? Even though I made that mistake in the first vid, I've still just kept the vid in, haven't I? That should be 36 pence. That's what rounds it up to £6 for the multiples. But that should be 36. I've written it as 35. 36 pence each way double. Game Phoenix and Shigar. Then I've done the forecast. Now, word on the forecast. I've done a 25p reverse forecast on those 2 in the 725 at Leopardstown. Normally, forecasts when I'm doing them on the channel are 50p reverse. And the reason I've half staked it is when I did the proofing that I did last year to get to the point where I was happy with the system that I'm using this year for the forecasts, in Ireland, there just wasn't enough evidence whether or not it stacked up in the same way. So I didn't have a big enough data pool. And there's not very many races where I think actually it might be worth playing a forecast in Ireland. So I'm putting it in knowing that the Irish forecasts last year were inconclusive on my, none of it was on the channel, but what I was doing off the channel. But given the prices of 10 and 28s, even if they come in a little bit, the value in the forecast return is going to be really, really decent. So I felt like it was worth just trying, even though for half stake. And then we've got 50p each way singles on Fast Felix, Fast Felix and Game Phoenix and Shigar. 50p wind single, longboard, no single on swell time, to a bit short at 8s. Sky are better for extra places at the Killarney races, but they are 16 runners, so if you get a non-runner, then most bookies will go down to 4 anyway, so it might not make that much difference. And Sky have been absolutely slated in the last couple of weeks on there since they've been updating the site. I'm not speaking from experience because I haven't gone on there and done it, but universally I've not found anyone in the comments who seems to think the changes to the Sky site are good. So Sky Flutter Group, if you're watching, it's really cack, really cack. I appreciate you've probably changed it so it's more in line with like Paddy and Betfair's back platform or whatever, but yeah, I think you're going to lose a lot of customers. People do not like what you've done, Sky Bet. So you might be really good for extra places, but you've made everything else a bunch more harder and worse, and you're going to put people off. And the people that you put off are probably the people that you actually want to keep, because they're little regular punters playing a few quid. So they're not the kind of people that you'd be bin off. So yeah, I think you've done yourself a disservice. So if you're watching Sky, yeah, I'll be honest, I haven't had such worse feedback about a betting site since the channel's existed. So yeah, consider yourselves on the naughty list. All right, that's the bet. That's what we're doing. All right. So, right now I'm into the ramble waffle, and bear in mind I've done this ramble waffle once. This is the second time I'm going to do this ramble waffle once. So I'm going to try and hopefully say all of the same profound points I said the first time I did it and not missed anything. But clearly, as I've already shown, I've kind of repeated some of the mistakes I've made as well. Just taking my old camera that bit today. Maybe that looks a bit better. Anywho, probably makes no difference. Right, what are we talking about? We're talking about a video that was made by a channel called Pegasus Race Ratings, and the chap that runs the channel is called Dave. He's not Dave Pegasus as far as I'm aware, but Pegasus Race Ratings is the name of the channel. Let me give you a little bit of context, a little bit of back history, and then I'll get on to the kind of the video. So, so from my experiences of Dave, he had a channel called Pegasus Race Ratings that he had on YouTube that had started to sort of get a little bit of following. And then one day he got very frustrated with YouTube and he deleted the channel, and then he had to rebuild a new channel. So actually his subscriber count is incredibly low and he hasn't put much content on there. When he started, on YouTube, he also started doing a Patreon service. And when I say Patreon service, it's free. So you can go and look at all of his data on Patreon. It's free. He started with the intention, he was very upfront and overt about it, that he planned in the future to, if he could demonstrate enough data and being decent on YouTube, then he would look to charge a small fee for his tips, which I've got no issue with in the slightest. If someone has proved their data over a really long period of time, and Dave and I seem to have a very similar view that data, we're not talking about a day, a week, a month, you're talking about year plus that. That's the kind of level of data in order to actually demonstrate a point or a system or whatever, not very short term. That stuff will come relevant later in the story. So anywho, as far as I could see, I liked what he was doing. He wouldn't be for everybody, because when he was making videos, he wasn't visually on the screen, and it was normally spreadsheets and data and that kind of stuff. So it's not an appeal for everybody. And if he's having a bet, it's 1, 2, 3 horses. A lot of days he doesn't bet. Some days it's just one horse, and they're all single only. So for those folk that like what I do with the multiples and stuff, not necessarily your cup of tea. But what I would say is I found him to be extremely knowledgeable about betting, and I liked his approach to data and systems. And ultimately, he hasn't really achieved what he wanted to do, which was have a big enough data pool where he's kind of happy where he's got to. So I'm not sure he's planning to carry on doing YouTube at all, from everything I understand. But he still exists on Patreon. So as a result of this ramble that we're going through now, you can check out his video if you want to, and then you can make choices whether or not you subscribe or not, because he might not carry on doing anything. Anywho, so the guy that made the video, I think, is absolutely 100% legit, and also has not done it for any gain. So this is really quite important. So there's no benefit to him doing this. He has made this video because he feels there are things to be said about another channel on YouTube that does tipping and charges for some of their selections. And he's been that ticked off. He's spent a lot of hours, days, weeks, months doing a whole bunch of research to compile a video that ultimately is an hour and a half. So if you're going to watch it, it's a bit more than your tea and your biscuits. You maybe want to get popcorn, but even maybe borderline get yourself a roast dinner or something lined up and then have that whilst you're watching the video if you're going to invest the time in it. It won't be for everyone, right? But it's an expose about another tipster and what goes on behind the scenes and what's the difference between what they talk about and show you every day and the reality of what sits behind that. And I think it's very, very good. It's very in depth. It's not going to be for everyone, right? So I think the video is legit. So that's first bit. Now I'm going to give you a bit of my black story blurb, and then I'm going to get into said video and tipster and give you kind of thoughts on it. Okay, so I started YouTube because Mrs. FC sort of coaxed me into it. It wasn't something I was initially going to do, but she suggested I should give it a go. But what I was watching at the time when I started a few years ago is mostly a lot of dodgy tipsters who were charging for tips, making sort of wild claims without backing anything up, and just trying to convince people that they were brilliant and part with money. There was a lot of that. There was quite a few bits, people kind of, sat in the front room, type, not charging any money, but equally not putting out particularly good quality stuff. And then there was a few other bits of in between, and a couple of half decent ones. So I felt there was a bit of an opportunity. Now, one of the main goals was because I've never wanted to charge money for tips. I never have, I never will charge money for selections. That's not what I'm about. So the channel's always been free, always will be free. One of my intentions was to try and, if I built up a channel, could I get people to follow what I do, and so they didn't have to then go and pay somebody else who was a bit dodgy for tips. Now, bear in mind, there are some legit people who charge for tips. I haven't really seen any on YouTube, but they do exist in the world. But most of them don't shout so much because they don't need to shout very much because they're just basically really good and respected, and they build up client bases naturally or organically. Those who tend to shout are potentially hiding something, usually speaking. Anywho, I wanted to do that. Now the challenge I've had latterly is this year we're running a loss of about 13% ROI, and last year only did it for 6 months, but we were in a similar boat. And I don't like losing, and I'm going to caveat that. Clearly, no one likes losing. One reason I don't like losing is that I know that if people are following what I'm doing, they're also losing some money. And the purpose of the channel was to try and help people win money, right? So I don't like that. But also, I don't like it because I think when I'm not doing so well, it dents my credibility and my ability, therefore, to be able to speak out about others and challenge others, because people would then suggest to me potentially that I'm just jealous, or this, that and the other. And clearly those people who have watched the channel, invest lots of time, know that I'm trying to do this for the right reasons and whatnot. But then you do end up coming under some level of scrutiny and flack and whatnot. So the fact that I've not been winning actually more pains me, because I think it doesn't allow me to have the platform I'd like to have to be able to point out other people's challenges and issues, should we say. So yeah, that pains me. And also it pains me because if I'm not doing very well, then more people are likely to go, well, he's not very good, and I'll go somewhere else. And then some of those people, they ultimately then go and pay some people some money to get tips that ultimately are probably worse than even the ones I'm giving out that aren't very good, if you see what I'm saying. So, I don't go about into all these things all the time, just because, try and keep it light and fun and entertaining and all that sort of jazz. But that's where I'm at. And so, I've been a little bit challenged by a couple of folk around, if I know stuff and I see stuff, why don't I kind of, call it out? And the reason is, that because I think there's a slight credibility challenge on the platform at points. Albeit, I actually believe that, because despite the fact that it's not gone brilliantly well in the last sort of year and a bit, people watch the channel because they trust me and respect me. That is what I'd like to believe. That won't be the case for everybody. There are definite folk who I've met and come across who, think terrible things about me, and that everyone's entitled to their opinion. But that's what I believe, and that's why I believe I've got built up a decent subscriber base, and people watch the videos because even when it's not going well, they trust and they respect, and they know I'm trying my hardest, and there's a really lovely community attached to the channel. I think that's why people do watch. So there is, in some regard, I feel like I've got an opportunity to speak out and say things, but I don't want to spend my life calling people out. I'm really aware. I watch a lot of stuff on YouTube. It's the field I'm operating in, right? So I watch all sorts of horse racing content, good, bad, ugly, indifferent. There's some okay people out there. There's some terrible ones. There's a lot of terrible ones have gone. But there's terrible. There's really awful. And just because someone's free and they keep a profit and loss doesn't mean they're not awful. There's a few of them out there as well. And I know people sort of like to big up everybody who's given it a go, but if you're genuinely absolutely terrible, then I wouldn't give any of those people airtime. Anyway, so that's probably a story for another day. So that's where I'm coming from, right? So that's where I'm at, why I do what I do, and why I'm sometimes reluctant to say things. And also, I don't want all the hassle and all the drama. Like I got a busy life outside of YouTube. I don't want to kind of think, I've got to keep looking at the comments on YouTube in case there's some people who are upset about something and that sort of stuff. And that's why I try and keep positive vibes on here. So if people don't like what I do and they say that, that's fine. But if you're really rude to me or someone else on the channel, I don't want your energy, right? So that's not what I'm into. I don't need that, right? So yeah, if I was running a pub and someone was being leery, I'd ask them to leave. Simple. Anywho, right. So, said tipster channel in question we're talking about is Peter Fillingham. That is who the expose is on. And I've been aware of him from the get-go. So, as I said, I've got views on everyone. I just don't talk about it on here and do that. I try and just focus on what I'm doing and every now and again make a jokey comment or whatever. Anywho, I was aware of his existence. And red flag number one. Red flag number one is when he started on YouTube, he didn't say why he was doing it. Now, two schools of thought. There are people who come on YouTube, I think like I do, that giving it a go, giving it a try. And some of those people are also people who think, actually, if I do this and do it well, then I can make some of the terrible people disappear and not be so visible. There's people like that. Then there are people who don't say why they're doing it. Most of those, not all, but most of those people who don't say why they're doing it, some point in the future from when they started, have a nice run, and then they start charging money. That's roughly the two versions of the truth that you see. You get people who are trying to do it because it's a bit of a hobby / or they are they're doing it out of some sort of help people type thing. And then there are the people that have started it because their intention is to make money from it. And most of those people who start with it with their intention to make money from it don't tell you that is what their intention is. They start and they carry on. So I believe Peter is in the latter of those camps. I believe he started with the intention of making money, but didn't say that when he started. He didn't mention anything at all. It wasn't until he did an interview on another channel, quite an in-depth interview, all about the history of him and whatever. And in there he talked about how he used to be like some sort of artistic director and he retired. And then about 16, 17 years ago, started playing the horses a bit more. Some of his friends said what he's backing. I'm not quite sure how his friends asking what he's backing suddenly went into charging for tips, because it would be a bit. I wouldn't ever charge my mates for tips. That's a bit weird. But anyway, he started charging some people from tips, is what he said. And then basically had a couple of, it didn't go so well the first year, but every year since there he hasn't looked back. It's been great, and he has a couple of months the way he loses, and that's it, and it's all good. And he basically said that he had gone onto YouTube because the population of people who follow his channel are aging, and some of them are dying or getting sick, and so he's going to be in a situation soon where he could take on new members, because right now he's too close to the VAT limit. Now, he used to always talk about his website and the fact he was on Company's House and stuff like that, and you can go and check it out. It was part of his legitimacy. If you go and do that and you look at his accounts, he wasn't anywhere near the tax threshold, so not quite sure how that worked, and maybe some people would suggest it was a ruse. I don't know, but anyway, it doesn't seem to add up, does it? So that's what he said, and then he said I'd be taking, he wants to take on a couple of new members, maybe 6 months, in a year's time. Post that interview, roll on a couple of months, he went on a little hot streak after trying various different methods unsuccessfully and whatever, and overall was probably about level, but it got on this nice little run, so he appeared, from what he was saying to people, he was doing really well, but he didn't have any clear statistics at this point about anything really, other than verbally saying that he was doing well. So he suddenly announced one day he was going to start charging people for his main tips, and they were going to be £85 a month. Swallow your tongue, £85 a month after doing a good run for a week. Now at this point, the key thing to kind of draw your attention to is what happened to all the people that were in the original service, because at this point they were never talked about ever again. It was like they went into the ether. They never existed. So he went from having a system to developing a new system to then, when he actually launched that and actually then started getting people to pay for it, suddenly the idea there was an original system disappeared. So what happened? What happened to all the original people? Did they all suddenly just die? Was there like some sort of dramatic weather event wherever they all lived, and they all just, that was it? Like they just went? Because suddenly his secondary service became the primary service. Strange. Anyway, and he could take as many people as he wanted, and he wasn't worried about VAT at any point at that point. So yeah, everybody can charge, pay £85. Eventually turned to £50 based on feedback, but weird that, because again, if you went from 85 to 50, would the people that were paying 85, the original people, not be really annoyed that you dropped out by £35? Like, and actually, if you've been charging £85 successfully for 16 years, why would you suddenly drop down by nigh on 50% of your rates? It don't make any sense, does it? So it's almost as like the original bit wasn't true, but who knows? So anyway, so he started charging, and then through 2024, he had different methods. He had these things where he was betting on exchanges at one point, laying bets and stuff. It was terrible. Always kept saying he was trying things and testing things and stuff. And, like I've said, test things privately, off a channel, once you've proofed it for a really long period of time. Not just literally test people and then go, put money on these, don't put money on these, and all this sort of stuff. He was back and forth like a yo-yo. And every time there was a really, really bad run, suddenly he would announce on a whim he's off on holiday, and he'd be back in a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks or 4 weeks, and then he'd come back, and every time he'd come back, lo and behold, he'd fixed the system, he tweaked it, and it was all better, right? This is the kind of stuff, this is how it operates, right? So anyway, so he then tried to build up his subscriber base in 2024. I was keeping stats at this point, just to keep an eye on where it was at. And I knew overall he was losing, despite the fact he kept talking about this particular moment in time, that if you went back to this moment in time, you'd be great, and it would be all good, and didn't want to mention anything else. Anyway, I knew at the end of 2024, he was slightly down. He didn't seem to know, but he would talk about it being, positive or whatever. Then we get to 2025, and he has an amazing month in January. There's a slight bit of me that is sceptical about whether it was all completely true, because at no point in his comment section did anybody actually go, well done, you're doing amazing. They complimented and say well done on free bets, but nobody actually said well done on the others, which is a little bit suspicious to me. Anywho, that's what happened. He had an amazing January, then he had a really good February and March. And all throughout that time, he kept telling people If all you want, if you want all this money, all you need to do is pay for is come inside. If you can get so much with the free tips, but if you want the real money, you need to pay me, and you get in. If you pay me the money, you get in. And at one point he was talking about there was a video in January where he was saying about the reason that the problem with these other tips is they make up results, and they fudge their figures and they make up results, but he doesn't do any of that stuff. So that's why his service is really, really good. All right, so this is what went on. And then since March, he's absolutely tanked, and he's actually wiped out February and March's figures. Anyway, so that's kind of where he's got to. But along the way, there were things that I saw with my own eyes that Dave's talked about in his video. So there was one point where somebody asked him, how much did you in this year? Someone said, how much did you make in 2024? He said £6,200. The reality of what Dave says on his video is it's minus 350. I believe Dave is done all that diligence. I actually had him slightly worse than that, but Dave's done a lot more diligence than I have. So, if Dave says it's minus 350, I'll go with that. It's only 6,500 out. That isn't a mistake. That is incredible incompetence, or it's dishonesty. Now, if you don't know, then if you don't know and therefore you're making it up, that is dishonest, right? If you do know but you don't want to say and you give a different figure, that is dishonest. If you haven't got a clue, you just don't say. So clearly that number was made up. He talks a lot about doing 2% variable stakes, and so basically you have a winning day, you up based on your bank, and if you have a losing day, you lower it down, and it basically protects you from really long losing runs. What Dave has unanimously proved on his video is that actually over long term you'd be worse off using his method than not. But when somebody asked him, and I saw this with my eyes as well, someone said to him, what would be the difference with your figures with a 2% variable stake? And he listed out month by month, and you get a calculator, it don't take very much work, and you go, well, he's just basically done 4.2% increase on every single one of those figures, exactly 4.2%. So that isn't made up, right? That isn't a mistake. That's genuinely because the coincidentalness that's beyond that. He's genuinely just gone all those figures and times it by 1.042, and it's come out whatever it's come out, and he said that. So he knows that isn't accurate unless he's incredibly incompetent, and if he's incredibly incompetent, he's a risk to everybody. So if he's not incredibly incompetent, he knows he made those figures up based off timesing it by 4.2% increase. This is the kind of thing that we're talking about. He talks all the time, right, about free trials. He doesn't talk about free trials. This is the point. I'm giving you my own punchline. He talks about he'll give you a refund you in your first month if you're not happy. That is basically the same as a free or trial, but actually better for him, because he could say, I'll give you a free trial, so everyone's first month is free, and then if you like it, you then pay after that. That's how a lot of people do business, right? Because it's simpler that way. You don't have to, there's no money exchange there. What he's doing sounds even better, but technically is actually better for him only, which is you pay him £50, and if you're not happy with the first month, he'll refund it, right? There's no question that he's not refunding people. That's fine. He's refunding people. Well done. So he's refunding people. But how many people actually bothered going, I'll get the refund? It wasn't great, but it was all right, and I'll just carry on anyway, yada, yada, yada. But it's the same thing as offering a free trial. He just is making an over milky meal about the fact that it's the best thing ever, because actually there's no risk. There's no risk. He keeps talking about no risk. Well, there is a risk, but there is a risk because if you lose money. Even if you get your £50 back, you've lost it all. And if you look at his June figures, minus 1,000, currently sat on minus 500 and something, so he's minus £1,500. So you have the unfortunateness of joining his service in June when he was telling you to do so. You'd be sat minus £1,500. Now he'd say, well, it's 2% variable stake, so it's not as bad as that. Okay, well, not much different, is it? And then he would say, well, I always say to people, bet small to start with. Well, if you're paying £50 a month for something, you're not really going to get much return of a couple of quid. Dave goes into really lovely detail about all this in his video. So the thing that I mean, there's lots of things that I don't like about the operation, but the one that really, really ticks me is there is absolutely no regard for people's financial, mental well-being. There is none. There is no consideration for verbally or digitally written how it's written, to say to people, anyone who normally runs a service like that will have gamble aware stuff, whatever. There's none of that. But equally, all he is interested, as far as everybody can see, is he wants you 50 quid. Because everything is rainbows and unicorns in his world, and he'll always tweak it, find a way out of it, whatever it might be. And actually, there's no regard for those folk that have lost £1,500 in the last 6 weeks. Now, clearly, if you started on the 1st of January, which, there might be a person that did, you would be sat on an okay number, even though it's massively, massively dwindled. If you look at overall the history of his channel, he's not completely terrible, right? So if you look at 2024 and 25 together, he's made a tiny, tiny profit from everything that you can see from what Dave's put together. When I say tiny, tiny profit, like I think about 22 points profit. So it's like, 1.5 points a month, let's imagine. So, the equivalent of about £60 a month. And you go, well, £60 a month's great. But if you're paying £50 a month to get the tips, then you're not actually making much money at all. So the point I'm saying on this is, there are worse tipsters out there. There are worse people who are less good, right? But generally speaking, these people who charge tips, it's like me saying to you, which piece of dog dirt would I most like to stand in? Or none of them. I don't want to stand in any of them. If they're dog dirt, I don't want to stand in them. Do you know what I'm saying? Right? That's terrible dog dirt. I wouldn't want to stand in that one. Well, that dog is not as bad as that dog dirt, is it? I mean, that one's not as bad. So maybe you just stand in that dog. Just don't stand in it, right? Don't stand in it. That's what I'm saying to you, right? There's quite a bit knocking about where I live. It's horrible. Anyway, so don't stand in it. So it's interesting. I think Dave's done a fantastic job of kind of exposing all this. That being said, I think the vast majority of people who watch these stuff on YouTube actually could see most of it anyway. There was only a very, very small amount of people that actually couldn't see it and have probably changed their mind. Actually, I think most people are just like, yeah, well, I knew that already. Like, I told you so, and all that sort of stuff. There's a lot of people like that about. And I'm not here for all this drama and stuff like that, and that's why I don't have videos like this very long where I ramble on about stuff. Just because, I'm not. I don't want all the. I don't want to spend my life like looking at the comments, going, "Oh, is there a nasty comment here and a nasty comment?" I don't want all that sort of stuff going on. So, was there anything else I was going to say? Let me just double check here. There's other stuff. I won't worry about that. Anyway, so. The point I was going to say with all of this, right? So, I'm recommending the video. You go and watch it, but it won't be for everybody. And I've explained to you how long it is and, roughly what it goes on about. But it does give you a really good insight into how what something can appear on the surface as a mature gentleman, offering his services, might not be so straight up and down as he might like you to believe it is. And just because he's not one of the loud shouty ones that says, come and join my Telegram and I've got extra services, doesn't mean he's not just exactly the same in there, because his intention for being here is all about money. Wants the money. If he wasn't getting any subscription fees, he wouldn't do it. He's not spreading joy. He's not here for giving you kind of quirky anecdotes. He's not telling you about why he's selecting the horses. People are questioning whether he's even backing the horses himself. I would absolutely have that question myself about whether he actually does bet his horses himself. I don't know. But what I'd say to you is, right, I went on Google, right, on the old AI, typed in the word fraud, and it said wrongful or criminal deception intended to result in financial gain. That is the definition of fraud according to AI. Wrongful or criminal deception intended to result in financial gain. Deception intended to result in financial gain. So if anybody has said anything that is not true, that they know is not true, and their goal is to make themselves seem better because they want to get your money, that would sound to me, it sounds like that is wrongful deception intended to result in financial gain. And this is the kind of the serious last bit of it, right? Genuinely, if anybody has experienced, is a viewer of the channel, experienced tipsters who they believe have wrongfully deceived them because they wanted some financial gain from them, then if you actually go, look on Action Fraud website, I'll put a link to that. I'll put a link to that too with this video. So that'll be in there too. Action Fraud website actually has a section on betting tipsters. Would you believe it? There are more and more out there than you'd ever know. But it is a common scam to basically, promise people the world and under-deliver, but still take their money. And even when you're under-delivering, still try and take more of their money. Because once you've got someone locked in and they've already given you the money, if you keep telling them it's going to get better, you've improved it, it'll be all right, they'll keep giving you the money. And these people who are giving you the money, some of these people have been, taken in by it. Some of these people could not afford to be taken in by it, and that's the fundamentally complete wrong thing here. So if at any point you feel like you have been deceived wrongfully because someone is intending to try and make financial gain from you, you may well have a legitimate case to go to Action Fraud with. And so I'm not suggesting someone has or hasn't committed fraud. What I'm saying is if I look at the legal definition of fraud, wrongful deception intended to result in financial gain, I see that there is some things here that we've talked about that might fall under that banner. So if you personally have experienced that and you want to investigate that, then Action Fraud is there. You'll also find a lot of these folk out there, they all tend to be able to suggest to you that they have a solicitor and libel and defamation and all that kind of stuff. It's weird, isn't it? Right? I don't have a solicitor. There are times in my life I needed one to consult on something or whatever, and I've had that. But I don't have them. I wonder why these people have them. I wonder why they've needed them. And it's baffling, isn't it? But anyway, Action Fraud exists to do that, and there is a specific segment on Action Fraud website about betting tipsters. So if you feel like you've been the victim of this, then you are completely within your rights to report somebody, an individual or an entity, to Action Fraud, and let them, give them the evidence of why you think you've been wronged. You could give them a 90-minute video. I don't think they'd probably watch that. And yeah, it's up to you. I mean, in YouTube land, I think there's going to be some interviews and stuff and whatever. I really couldn't give two hoots, to be honest. Like, if someone's taken the time to do a 90-minute video about why somebody is how somebody has basically misled folk, then that's what it is, right? So why are we going to spend hours then on more videos about the same subject? And I appreciate I've made a video on the subject, but it's the only video I'm going to make on the subject. And that's why this video has ended up being very, very, very long. So that is it. Thus endeth the sermon of the flat cap. And if anyone's made it to the end, well done. And if anyone's ever been a victim of a betting tipster scam, then I'm sorry. And if anyone's losing on my tips at the moment without paying for them, albeit, then I'm also sorry, because I don't want that to be the case. And yeah, I want the channel to grow and this to be a platform for us to be able to speak out about issues such as this. So yeah, that is me. I'm going to sign off on that note and wish you all very, very well with whatever you've been doing this week. Stay safe, and if something looks too good to be true, probably is. Bye bye.